How's it going, guys? Coming at you with a little bit of a food for thought video. I have a question for you, and that is, what would you choose of these three rifles in a poop hits the fan scenario? Now, before you answer that question, what we're going to do is we're going to go through and talk about each one of these rifles individually and talk about their pros and their cons. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to break those pros and cons down into 9 categories. And I'm going to score each of these rifles between 1 and 3 points for their respective strength and weaknesses in that particular category. The reason why I'm doing this is to kind of give us a little bit better objective point of view when it comes to rifles. I mean, I know that everybody has their personal favorites and personal opinions about this, but I'm trying to create as an objective standpoint as possible so that we can actually gauge what best fits our needs and kind of add a little bit of value to this discussion. Alright, so before we begin the pros and cons discussion, let me just introduce you to each one of these firearms, tell you what they are. I've got my little handy arrow here, and this is going to be my pointer stick, okay? So in the middle here we have the Smith & Wesson M&P 15. This is kind of a standard carbine length AR-15, okay? Down here we have the JRC, or Just Right carbine. This is a 9mm carbine, utilizes Glock magazines. And I just posted a full review of this particular gun if you guys want to check that out as well. Then up top we have a Ruger 1022, but this is sitting in the Troy T22 stock chassis system. Super awesome system. But the reason why I've chose these particular rifles is that they are very, very similar from a tactical standpoint. Their ergonomics are the same, are very similar. The accessories that you can mount them with are virtually the same. And so it kind of levels the playing field a little bit between them and also gives us more of an apples to apples comparison. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the pros and cons of each one of these different firearms. So let's go ahead and start with the AR-15 here in the middle. The elephant in the room really is that we're talking about rifle ballistics versus weaker, more pistol-oriented calibers with the other two rifles. So you're going to really have the best firepower and you're going to have the best ballistics with the AR-15. That really is the biggest pro of the AR-15. It also has the longest effective range and it's easiest to shoot at range. So it has the least amount of drop and the flattest shooting cartridge at distance, and so you can make those shots easier with an AR-15 than you can with either of the two other rifles. The biggest cons with the AR-15 is that it is the most expensive to shoot. It has the most recoil and the most blast. It also has the largest ammunition cartridge. Okay, so it weighs the most. 9mm and .223 weigh almost virtually identical in weight. Okay, so if you're talking 115 grain bullet versus a 55 grain bullet in the .223, you're talking almost exactly the same weight. But .223 definitely loses out because it is the largest cartridge, so it's the least size efficient of the three. It also has the largest magazines, which is maybe a small point, but it is a point nonetheless. When you're talking about carrying the load, if you have to carry this gun, the magazines definitely going to add weight to your loadout. So it's also another con is it's also the loudest of the three cartridges. Okay, so .223 has the most blast. It's the loudest gun. If concealment or staying undetected is important in poop hits a fan, the .223 is going to be the least efficient when it comes to that category. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the 9mm. Now, the 9mm is quieter than the .223 as a pro. It's also middle of the range when it comes to energy or power of the round. Coincidentally enough, the .223 or the 22 long rifle and the 9mm have virtually the same drop rates or the same external ballistics as each other. And so their effective range is about 400 meters or less, and they're almost identical to each other. And that's about roughly half that of the .223. So it's definitely firepower, it's middle of the road. It has less muzzle blast and less recoil than the .223. And one of the biggest pros to the 9mm carbine is that it is interchangeable. The magazines are interchangeable with this gun with any of your Glock 9mm. And so that makes it super, super versatile. And I think that's a huge pro for me. For those of you that like to run minimalistic systems, that is a huge, huge plus for you guys. Now, the biggest con, as I see them with the 9mm carbine, is its limited effective range and its weight in ammunition compared to the 22. And it's also more expensive to shoot than the 22, but less expensive than the 223. So that's a con. Okay, so middle of the road expense for the particular round. Now let's go up to the 1022. One of the biggest pros that I see with a 22 long rifle is that it's the lightest firearm of the three. It's also the lightest ammunition, so you can carry about 4 times the amount of ammo per weight than these other two rifles, which is a huge plus. It's also the quietest of the rounds, so it has the least muzzle blast, the least recoil, and it's quieter. So if, again, concealment and going undetected is an important thing in Poop Hits the Fan, the 22 definitely is the winner on that. It also is the easiest to shoot, so you can shoot it faster and get faster follow-up shots, and those that are newer to firearms, it's easier to shoot, or smaller frame people, it's easier to shoot as well. So it weighs the least, it's easiest to shoot. It's also, one of the biggest pluses is that it is the least expensive of these three to shoot for sure. And now for the cons. The second elephant in the room is the fact that it is the least powerful between these three rifles. So you're shooting, you have a limited effective range, and you have limited power or stopping power with the 22 compared to these other two rifles. So that's the second elephant in the room, is the fact that that's the least powerful of the three different rifles. Alright, so like I mentioned earlier, I've broken those pros and cons down into 9 different categories, and I'm going to score each of these rifles between 1 and 3 points, or first, second, and third place when it comes to these their strengths and weaknesses in these particular categories respectively. So the first category is recoil, and obviously the least amount of recoil is coming from the 22. The most recoil is coming from the AR-15, and middle of the pack is the 9mm carbine. Power or energy of the round is the second category. Obviously the AR-15 is going to win this category with the most powerful round, second being the 9mm, and third being the 22 long rifle. Third category is ease of shooting. Obviously the 1022 is going to be the easiest to shoot and manipulate because of its lightweight and because of the lack of recoil. The hardest is going to probably be the 223 because of muzzle blast recoil, and that being the most there. 9mm running up the middle of the pack, which is less muzzle blast and noise than the 223 and less recoil, but more than the 22. Category number 4 is noise and blast. Obviously it goes AR-15, the most noisy, the 9mm carbine the second, and 22 the third. Now ammo weight is the 5th category. 22 wins this category for sure by about 4 times. And the other two ammunitions weigh about the same. So I'm going to tip the category a little bit, giving the second place to the 9mm because of its smaller cartridge size. The 223 is virtually the same weight, but it does weigh slightly more, and it is a larger cartridge itself. So now cost per round is going to be another obvious category, 22 being the cheapest. I know that people have a hard time finding it, but 22 is definitely the cheapest round per shot. The 223 being the most expensive, and again the 9mm carbine running up the middle of the pack with the second place cost-wise. The 8th category is effective range. Now the 223 is going to double the effective range as these other two rifles. So the other two rifles' effective range are virtually identical. I'd say the 22 and the 9mm effective range is 400 meters or less. And the last category that I've come up with is versatility. Now I've given the 9mm carbine, the Just Right carbine, and the Troy 1022 a tie on this, okay? Because both of these guns, you can find handguns that utilize the same magazines and the same ammunition. So again, for those of you that are looking for those minimalistic type weapon systems, you can't beat the 1022 and the Glock Just Right carbine, really. I mean, you can find, this will shoot any 9mm Glock, and there are firearms out there, handguns, that shoot and utilize the same magazine, but there's more that actually utilize the same caliber, okay? Now, 223, I know that there are AR-15 pistols and other pistols that utilize the 223, but they're bulky, and I don't really consider them handguns, to be honest. And so I'm giving that a 1 and last place in the category of versatility when it comes to interchangeability. Okay, so if we actually add up the winners of each of these 9 categories, we actually get 6.5 points for the Troy 1022, a half a point for the JRC, and 2 points for the AR-15. The half a point was in their tie for versatility, the JRC and the Troy 1022. And that's coming from the most objective standpoint as we possibly can in these 9 categories. Now, the subjectivity of this particular discussion comes in weight of importance in those categories. So I know that in an AR-15, power factor is weighted heavily in the AR-15's favor. And so if having more terminal and external ballistics is important to you, then the AR-15 is probably going to dwarf a lot of the Troy 1022's aspects and wins in other categories, because that is going to be your most important category, okay? What about ammunition weight? So if you want to carry more ammunition and that's more important to you than having a more powerful rifle, then the Troy 1022 is definitely going to win out in that battle. So you can see kind of where I'm coming from. The subjectivity of these 3 particular rifles is really going to come in the form of what is most important to you in those categories. So anyway, now is the time that you guys get to answer that question. Which one of these 3 rifles would you choose in a poop hits the fan scenario? So what I want you to do is leave a comment down below. Tell me which one of these guns you would actually choose and why. Okay, so tell me which one of the main categories is important to you and why that is. And I think if you guys go down and read the comments down below, you'll find it kind of interesting, and you'll see probably aspects to the discussion that you didn't see otherwise. So like somebody that lives in like the open spaces of the West, like Wyoming or something like that, an AR-15 would definitely be a better choice because you can shoot further easier, okay? So if you have to, like hunt large game on the open prairie, a 223 is definitely going to rule the roost. But if you live in like Arkansas, where the forests are more dense, you have less distance between or less line of sight, the 22 might really be an effective thing. But if you live in like an urban environment where you don't want to have something super high power like an AR-15, but you want some more power than a 22, the 9mm carbine might be just the ticket for you. So go ahead and put your answers down below. I'm really looking forward to them. If you have any other questions or comments regarding the video, feel free to leave them down below as well, and I'll try to get back to you. And but hopefully you guys found it interesting. Don't forget to share the video with your friends. Get more people in on it. I'd like the more people that answer the question, the better. I think it'll be really interesting. And as always, guys, thanks very, very much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video. See ya. How's it going, guys? And welcome back to the tabletop. This is going to be a review of the Just Right carbine. This particular one is chambered in 9mm, and I'm super excited to bring you this review just because I've really enjoyed this gun, and I think that it's something that is worthy of spending some time and attention to on a detailed review. This is actually the second time I've tried to do this review. The first time it got way too long, and mainly because there's a lot to talk about with this rifle, and I really want to give it a fair shake. So I'm going to try to be as concise as I possibly can, but it's still going to probably be end up being kind of a longer review. But